I smoothed my dress for the 100th time, taking a deep breath before knocking on Jacob's door. My fiancé and I had been living separately while we planned our wedding, but today was the day we'd finally start looking at houses together. As I raised my hand to knock, the door swung open. "Oh," I stumbled back, startled to see not Jacob, but an older woman with piercing blue eyes and a severe expression. "I'm sorry, I must have the wrong—" "You must be Beth," the woman said, her voice clipped. "I'm Elaine, Jacob's mother." I blinked in confusion. "I'm sorry, there must be some mistake. Jacob's mother passed away when he was young." Elaine's lips thinned into a tight smile. "His adoptive mother, yes, I'm his biological mother." My mind reeled. In the 2 years we'd been together, Jacob had never mentioned a biological mother. Before I could formulate a response, Jacob appeared behind Elaine, his face pale. "Beth, I can explain," he started, but Elaine cut him off. "There's nothing to explain, Jacob. I'm here now, and it's time we were a family again." I looked between them, my stomach churning. "Jacob, what's going on?" He stepped around Elaine, reaching for my hand. "I'm so sorry, Beth. I only found out recently myself. Elaine contacted me a few weeks ago, and I've been trying to figure out how to tell you." Elaine's eyes narrowed as she watched Jacob take my hand. "Well, now everyone knows. Shall we go inside? I've made lunch." I hesitated, but Jacob squeezed my hand reassuringly. "It's okay," he murmured. "We'll talk about this." As we entered the apartment, I couldn't help but notice how Elaine had made herself at home. Her coat was draped over the back of Jacob's favorite chair, and the air was thick with the scent of unfamiliar cooking. Sit, Elaine urged, ushering us to the table. "I've made Jacob's favorite, pot roast with carrots and potatoes." I frowned. "But Jacob's a vegetarian." Elaine waved her hand dismissively. "Nonsense, my boy loves a good pot roast." Jacob cleared his throat. "Actually, Mom, Elaine, I haven't eaten meat in years." A flicker of annoyance crossed Elaine's face before she covered it with a smile. "Well, more for us then. Beth, you'll have some, won't you?" "I'm not really hungry," I said, my appetite gone. "Jacob, can we talk for a moment, privately?" Before he could answer, Elaine interjected. "Now, Beth, there's no need for secrets. We're all family here." I bristled at her presumption. "With all due respect, Elaine, I've only just met you, and Jacob and I need to discuss this situation." Elaine's eyes flashed. "Situation? I'm his mother. I have every right to be here." Jacob stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "Elaine, please, Beth's right. We need a moment." As Jacob led me to the bedroom, I could feel Elaine's eyes boring into my back. Once the door was closed, I turned to Jacob. "What the hell is going on?" He ran a hand through his hair, looking more stressed than I'd ever seen him. "I'm so sorry, Beth. I should have told you sooner. Elaine contacted me out of the blue a few weeks ago. She claims she gave me up for adoption when I was a baby, but now she wants to reconnect. And you believe her?" Jacob shrugged helplessly. "I don't know what to believe. She has documents, photos. I was going to tell you, I swear. I just wanted to be sure before I brought it up." I took a deep breath, trying to process everything. "Okay, so what now?" Before Jacob could answer, there was a sharp knock at the door. "Jacob? Is everything all right in there?" I groaned quietly. "She's not going to make this easy, is she?" Jacob squeezed my hand. "We'll figure this out together, okay? I love you." As we opened the door to face Elaine, I couldn't shake the feeling that our lives had just become infinitely more complicated. Little did I know just how right I was. I never imagined my wedding planning would involve fending off an overzealous future mother-in-law, but here I was, staring at Elaine across the bridal boutique. She'd somehow wormed her way into our dress shopping appointment, and now she was eyeing the gowns with a critical gaze that made my skin crawl. "Oh, Beth, darling," Elaine cooed, holding up a frilly monstrosity. "This would look divine on you. So traditional, so proper." I forced a smile. "Thanks, Elaine, but I was thinking of something more modern." Her lips tightened. "Modern? But Jacob loves classic styles. Don't you want to please your husband?" Before I could retort, my best friend and maid of honor, Sarah, intervened. "I think Beth knows what Jacob likes better than anyone. Right, Beth?" I nodded gratefully, but Elaine wasn't finished. She sidled up to me, her voice low. "You know, dear, I've known Jacob his whole life. Even if we were separated for a while, I know what's best for him." I bit my tongue, reminding myself that she was Jacob's mother, allegedly. We still hadn't confirmed her story, but Jacob seemed convinced. I tried to focus on the dresses, but Elaine's constant commentary made it impossible. After an hour of thinly veiled insults and helpful suggestions, I was at my wit's end. "I think that's enough for today," I announced, my voice strained. "Thanks for coming, Elaine, but Sarah and I can handle the rest." Elaine's eyes flashed. "But we've only just started, and I haven't even shown you the guest list changes I've made." I froze. "Guest list changes?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, just a few additions. Some old friends of mine who'd love to see Jacob, and I took the liberty of removing a few of your college friends. We need to keep things classy, after all." That was the last straw. "Elaine," I said, my voice tight, "this is our wedding. Jacob's and mine, not yours. You don't get to make changes to our guest list or anything else." Her face darkened. "I'm his mother. I have every right." "You've known him for 3 weeks," I exploded. "I've been with Jacob for 2 years. I know him, I love him, and I'm the one marrying him, not you." The boutique fell silent. Elaine's face contorted with rage, but before she could speak, my phone rang. It was Jacob. I answered, grateful for the interruption. "Beth?" Jacob's voice was strained. "Where are you? Is my mother with you?" "We're at the bridal shop. Why? What's wrong?" He sighed heavily. "I just got home. The apartment's a mess. Looks like someone's been going through our things. And there's a note. From Elaine." My blood ran cold. I looked at Elaine, who was watching me with an unsettling smile. "What does it say?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. "It says she's fixing things, making our home more suitable. Beth, I think she broke in while we were out." I closed my eyes, willing myself to stay calm. "Jacob, I need you to listen to me. Your mother is here right now. She's been interfering with the wedding plans, changing our guest list without permission. And now this? We need to talk about boundaries." There was a long pause. "You're right," he said finally. "I'll meet you at the shop. We'll deal with this together." As I hung up, Elaine approached, her face a mask of concern. "Is everything all right, dear? Jacob's not having second thoughts, is he?" The implication made my blood boil. "No, Elaine, he's not. But we do need to have a serious conversation about boundaries." Her eyes narrowed. "Boundaries? But we're family now. There are no boundaries in family." As Jacob's car pulled up outside the boutique, I steeled myself for the confrontation to come. One way or another, this ended today. Our wedding, our lives, depended on it. I smoothed my dress and took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves. Today was supposed to be a joyous occasion, my bridal shower. My best friends had planned everything, and I was determined to enjoy it, despite the cloud of tension that had been hanging over us since Elaine's arrival in our lives. As I entered the restaurant's private room, I was greeted by cheers and hugs from my closest friends and family. The room was beautifully decorated with soft pink and white flowers, and a table laden with gifts caught my eye. For a moment, I allowed myself to relax and bask in the love surrounding me. That moment was short-lived. My phone buzzed insistently in my purse. I ignored it at first, but when it rang for the 3rd time in 5 minutes, I excused myself to check it. My heart sank when I saw Jacob's name on the screen. "Beth?" His voice was strained. "I'm so sorry to bother you during your shower, but there's been an accident. Elaine's in the hospital." My blood ran cold. "What happened? Is she okay?" "She says she fell down the stairs at her apartment. She's asking for me and for you." I closed my eyes, torn between concern and suspicion. "Jacob, I know," he interrupted. "But she's alone, Beth. She doesn't have anyone else. Could you come? Please?" I glanced back at the room full of my friends and family, all gathered to celebrate our upcoming wedding. With a heavy heart, I agreed. When I returned to explain the situation, Sarah pulled me aside. "Beth, don't you think this is a little convenient?" she whispered. "Your bridal shower just happens to be interrupted by Elaine's emergency?" I nodded, the same thought having crossed my mind. "I know, but what can I do if she's really hurt?" Sarah squeezed my hand. "Just be careful, okay? That woman gives me the creeps." An hour later, I found myself in the hospital waiting room with Jacob. A nurse approached us, looking confused. "Mr. Reeves, your mother's asking for you, but, well, there seems to be some confusion. She's not actually injured." Jacob and I exchanged glances. "What do you mean?" he asked. The nurse lowered her voice. "She came in claiming she had fallen, but there are no signs of injury, not even a bruise. When we tried to discharge her, she became agitated." My suspicions confirmed. I felt a surge of anger. Jacob, she faked this. She did this to ruin my bridal shower. Before Jacob could respond, we heard Elaine's voice echoing down the hallway. Jacob, my boy, where are you? I need you. We followed the sound to find Elaine sitting up in a hospital bed, looking perfectly healthy. When she saw us, her face lit up, but then fell when she noticed me. Oh, Beth, she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. You didn't have to come. I know how important your little party was. I bit back a retort, but Jacob spoke up. Mom, what's going on? The nurses say you're not hurt. Elaine's eyes widened innocently. Not hurt? But I fell. I could have died, Jacob, and all Beth cares about is her party. That was the last straw. Enough, I shouted, surprising even myself. Elaine, this has to stop. You didn't fall. You made this all up to sabotage my bridal shower and manipulate Jacob. I'm done playing nice. Elaine's face contorted with rage. How dare you? Jacob, are you going to let her speak to your mother like this? We both turned to Jacob, who looked torn. He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. No, Jacob. It's time to choose. Either you set clear boundaries with your mother right now, or... I took a deep breath, steeling myself. Or I'm calling off the wedding. The room fell silent. Jacob's eyes widened in shock, Elaine's narrowed in triumph, and I stood my ground, heart pounding. Everything hinged on Jacob's next words. I stared at my phone, willing it to ring. Jacob had been gone for 3 days on a business trip, and I was counting the hours until his return. After the hospital incident, he'd finally set some boundaries with Elaine, but I couldn't shake the feeling that our troubles were far from over. A sharp knock at the door startled me from my thoughts. I approached cautiously, peering through the peephole. My heart sank. Elaine stood on our doorstep, a sickeningly sweet smile plastered on her face. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. Elaine, what are you doing here? She brushed past me, entering without invitation. Oh, Beth, dear, I thought you might be lonely with Jacob away. I've come to keep you company and help around the house. Before I could protest, she was in our kitchen, skiing at the dishes in the sink. My, Jacob can't come home to this mess. Let's get started, shall we? For the next few hours, I found myself trapped in a bizarre domestic nightmare. Elaine critiqued every aspect of our home, from the way I folded laundry to the contents of our refrigerator. Kale chips? Quinoa? She wrinkled her nose at our health food. No wonder you're so thin, dear. Jacob needs a woman with some meat on her bones. I bit my tongue, reminding myself that engaging would only make things worse. But as the day wore on, my patience wore thin. Elaine, I said finally, as she rearranged our bookshelf for the 3rd time. I appreciate your help, but I can manage on my own. She turned, eyes flashing. Can you? Because from what I've seen, you're hardly fit to be a wife, let alone a mother. The words hit me like a slap. Excuse me? Oh, don't act surprised. Elaine's voice dripped with disdain. Your career woman lifestyle, your modern ideas about marriage, it's all wrong for Jacob. He needs a traditional family, with a wife who knows her place. I felt my anger rising, but before I could respond, Elaine's eyes landed on a framed photo of Jacob and me. In one swift motion, she knocked it off the shelf, sending it crashing to the floor. Oops, she said, not sounding sorry at all. How clumsy of me. As I knelt to pick up the shattered glass, a realization hit me. This wasn't about helping or even about criticizing me. Elaine was trying to erase me from Jacob's life, piece by piece. I stood, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Elaine, I think it's time for you to leave. She laughed, a harsh, mirthless sound. Leave? Oh, no, dear. I'm not going anywhere. This is my son's home, and I have every right to be here. No, you don't. I moved towards the door, opening it wide. Jacob and I are engaged. This is our home, not yours. Now, please leave before I call the police. Elaine's face contorted with rage. You ungrateful little... She lunged forward, her nails raking across my cheek. I stumbled back, shocked by the sudden violence. In that moment, something in me snapped. I grabbed Elaine's arm, my grip firm but not bruising. Get out now. For a moment we stood there, locked in a silent battle of wills. Then slowly Elaine straightened up. This isn't over, she hissed. Jacob will see you for what you really are. As the door slammed behind her, I sank to the floor, my hand touching the scratch on my cheek. Tears welled up, a mix of anger, fear, and frustration. I reached for my phone with shaking hands, dialing Jacob's number. It went straight to voicemail. Jacob, I said, my voice breaking. we need to talk. As soon as you get home. I can't do this anymore. Something has to change. As I ended the call, I looked around our apartment, now bearing the scars of Elaine's visit. I knew I was at a crossroads. Either Jacob would finally see the truth about his mother, or I'd have to make the hardest decision of my life. Either way, when Jacob returned, nothing would ever be the same. I paced our living room, my nerves frayed to breaking point. Jacob's key turned in the lock, and I froze, my heart pounding. He entered, his tired smile fading as he took in my disheveled appearance and the lingering chaos from Elaine's visit. "Beth? What happened?" I burst into tears, the stress of the past few days finally overwhelming me. Jacob rushed to my side, enveloping me in his arms. Through sobs, I recounted Elaine's intrusion, her cruel words, and the physical altercation. Jacob's face darkened with each word. "I can't believe she'd go this far," he muttered, gently touching the fading scratch on my cheek. "Jacob, we can't go on like this," I said, pulling away to look him in the eye. "Your mother is tearing us apart. She's manipulative, she's cruel, and I'm afraid of what she might do next." He nodded slowly, a pained expression on his face. "You're right. I've been in denial, hoping she'd change, but this is unforgivable." Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. A sharp knock at the door made us both jump. Jacob moved to answer it, but I grabbed his arm, shaking my head frantically. "Jacob? Beth? I know you're in there." Elaine's voice, shrill and angry, carried through the door. "Open up this instant." Jacob's jaw clenched. He strode to the door, throwing it open. "That's enough, Mom. You need to leave, now." Elaine's eyes widened in faux innocence. "Leave? But darling, I've brought dinner. I thought we could all talk, clear the air after that unfortunate misunderstanding with Beth." I stepped forward, finding strength in Jacob's presence. "It wasn't a misunderstanding, Elaine. You attacked me." "Attacked?" Elaine laughed, the sound grating. "Oh, please, you're so sensitive, dear. A little constructive criticism, and you fall to pieces. Jacob, surely you see how unstable she is?" Jacob's voice was cold. "The only unstable person here is you, Mom. I've seen the truth now, and I won't let you hurt Beth or come between us anymore." Elaine's facade crumbled, her face contorting with rage. "You ungrateful child. After everything I've done for you, I gave you life. I found you again. And this is how you repay me?" "You didn't find me," Jacob said quietly. "You've been lying this whole time, haven't you?" The silence that followed was deafening. Elaine's mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out. Jacob continued, his voice gaining strength. "I called the adoption agency while I was away. They have no record of you. You're not my biological mother, are you?" Elaine's composure shattered completely. "No, you can't take him from me again." She lunged forward, her hands clawing at Jacob. I reacted instinctively, stepping between them. Elaine's nails raked across my arm, drawing blood. Jacob pulled me back, pushing Elaine away. "That's it," he growled, reaching for his phone. "I'm calling the police." Elaine's eyes darted wildly between us. "You wouldn't dare. I'll tell them you attacked me. Who do you think they'll believe? A sweet, helpless old lady, or you two?" My blood ran cold at the threat, but Jacob didn't waver. "Go ahead. We have security cameras in the hallway. They'll show exactly what happened." The fight seemed to drain out of Elaine. She sagged against the doorframe, suddenly looking every bit her age. "Please," she whispered, "don't send me away. I have no one else." For a moment, I saw a flicker of doubt in Jacob's eyes. I squeezed his hand, reminding him of everything we'd been through. Jacob took a deep breath. "I'm sorry, but you need help, professional help. We can't provide that, and we can't let you continue to hurt us." As Jacob dialed 911, I watched Elaine crumple to the floor, her sobs echoing in the hallway. Despite everything, I felt a pang of pity. But as I looked at Jacob, his face set with determination, I knew we were making the right choice. When he hung up, Jacob turned to me. "Beth, I'm so sorry for everything, but I promise you it ends today. We're going to start fresh, just the two of us." I nodded, a mix of emotions swirling inside me. As we waited for the police to arrive, I realized this was just the beginning of a new chapter in our lives. One without Elaine, but full of challenges we'd have to face together. I breathed in the crisp morning air, savoring the peace of our new neighborhood. It had been 3 months since we'd moved, leaving behind the chaos Elaine had brought into our lives. Jacob and I were finally settling into a routine, our wedding plans back on track. As I sipped my coffee on our small balcony, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Beth? The voice sent chills down my spine. Elaine, how did you get this number? I demanded, my hand shaking. Oh, darling, did you really think you could hide from me? Elaine's voice dripped with malice. I know everything, including your little indiscretion. My mind raced. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. I saw you with him, in our old apartment. How could you do this to Jacob? I felt sick. Elaine, you're not making any sense. We don't live there anymore. She laughed, a chilling sound. Lies. I have proof. Photos. Jacob will be devastated when he sees them. The call ended abruptly. I stood frozen, my coffee forgotten. What photos? What was she talking about? My phone buzzed again, a text from Jacob. Got a strange call from Mom. She's saying something about you cheating? Call me ASAP. Panic gripped me. I dialed Jacob's number, pacing frantically. Beth? Jacob's voice was strained. What's going on? Jacob, I swear I haven't done anything. Elaine's lying. She sent photos, Beth, he interrupted, of you and some guy entering our old apartment yesterday. My mind whirled. That's impossible. I haven't been there in months. Jacob, you have to believe me. There was a long pause. I want to, Beth, but these photos... Listen to me, I pleaded. Go to the apartment. Talk to the new tenants. They'll tell you I wasn't there. Another pause. Okay, I'll go now. But Beth, if you're lying... The call ended, leaving me in agonizing silence. Hours passed like years. I called our old landlord, who confirmed that a young couple, Tom and Sarah, had moved in last month. I left frantic messages for Jacob, begging him to call me back. Finally, my phone rang. Jacob. It's worse than we thought, he said, his voice tight. Elaine broke into the apartment. The new tenants, Tom and Sarah, they're terrified. Elaine's been stalking them, convinced Tom is your lover. Relief and horror warred within me. Oh God, Jacob, is everyone okay? They're shaken up, but fine. Beth, I'm so sorry I doubted you. Elaine, she's completely lost it. She photoshopped those pictures, made it look like you and Tom. Where is she now? I asked, dreading the answer. That's the thing. She ran when she saw me. The police are looking for her. But a sharp knock at our door cut him off. My blood ran cold. Jacob, I whispered. I think she's here. Beth, listen to me. Do not open that door. I'm on my way. Call 911 right now. The knocking intensified, turning into pounding. Beth, I know you're in there. Open this door, you homewrecker. I fumbled for my phone, dialing 911 with shaking hands. Please, I begged the operator. She's trying to break in. I think she might hurt me. Police are on their way, the calm voice assured me. Stay on the line. A sickening crack echoed through the apartment. She was breaking down the door. Beth? Elaine's voice was unhinged. Come out and face what you've done. I retreated to the bedroom, barricading the door. Tears streamed down my face as I heard Elaine rampaging through our home. Please hurry, I whispered into the phone, praying that help would arrive in time. The bedroom door shuddered under Elaine's assault. I closed my eyes, wondering how our dream of a peaceful life had turned into this nightmare. As the door began to splinter, I realized with terrifying clarity that this confrontation with Elaine would determine not just my future with Jacob, but potentially my very survival. The bedroom door splintered, and Elaine burst in, her eyes wild with rage. I scrambled backwards, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. You lying little tramp, Elaine screeched, brandishing a kitchen knife. You've ruined everything. I raised my hands, trying to keep my voice steady. Elaine, please, this is all a misunderstanding. I've never cheated on Jacob. I love him. She lunged forward, the knife glinting in the dim light. I dodged, feeling the blade whistle past my ear. Liar, she screamed. I saw the photos. I saw you with him. As I frantically looked for an escape, I heard sirens in the distance. Help was coming, but would it arrive in time? Suddenly, Jacob's voice boomed through the apartment. Mom! Stop this now! Elaine froze, her head whipping towards the sound. I seized the moment, ducking past her and bolting for the door. But she was quicker than I expected. Her hand latched onto my hair, yanking me back with surprising strength. You're not going anywhere, she hissed in my ear. The front door burst open, and Jacob rushed in, followed closely by 2 police officers. The scene before them must have been shocking. Elaine holding a knife to my throat, both of us disheveled and panting. Drop the weapon, one officer commanded, his gun trained on Elaine. For a moment, everything was still. Then Elaine's grip loosened. The knife clattered to the floor, and I stumbled away, collapsing into Jacob's arms. As the officers handcuffed Elaine, she began to sob. "I was just trying to protect you, Jacob. She was going to take you away from me." Jacob's voice was firm but sad. "No, Mom. The only one trying to come between us was you, and now you've gone too far." The next few hours passed in a blur. We were taken to the police station, where we gave our statements. Tom and Sarah, the new tenants from our old apartment, were there too, looking shaken but relieved. "I'm so sorry," Tom said, his voice trembling. "We had no idea who she was or why she was stalking us. When she broke in, we thought—" I reached out and squeezed his hand. "It's not your fault. None of this is." As we waited for the paperwork to be processed, Jacob paced the small waiting room. "I can't believe it came to this," he muttered. "My own mother, or whoever she really is." I stood, wrapping my arms around him. "We'll get through this, Jacob. Together." He pulled back, his eyes serious. "Beth, after everything that's happened, would you understand if I wanted to postpone the wedding?" My heart sank, but I nodded. "Of course. We can take all the time you need." To my surprise, he shook his head. "No, that's not what I meant. I want to marry you as soon as possible. Today, if we can. Life's too short, and I don't want to waste another moment." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Are you sure?" He cupped my face in his hands. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Just then, the detective handling our case approached. "Mr. Reeves, Miss Thompson, we're ready for you to sign the formal charges against Elaine Simmons." Jacob took a deep breath. "And after that?" The detective's expression softened. "She'll be held for psychiatric evaluation. Given the circumstances, it's likely she'll be committed for treatment." I squeezed Jacob's hand, knowing how difficult this must be for him. He squared his shoulders. "Let's do this." As we followed the detective, I felt a mix of emotions. Relief that the nightmare was over, sadness for the pain Elaine had caused, and hope for the future Jacob and I would build together. But as we rounded the corner, a commotion erupted. Shouts echoed down the hallway, followed by a familiar, chilling voice. "Jacob! Don't let them take me!" We froze, watching in horror as Elaine, somehow free from her restraints, barreled towards us. In that moment, I realized our ordeal was far from over. The true climax of our struggle with Elaine was yet to come, and it would determine the course of our lives forever. Time seemed to slow as Elaine charged towards us, her eyes wild with desperation. Jacob instinctively stepped in front of me, shielding me from his deranged mother. "Mom, stop!" Jacob's voice was firm, authoritative. "This ends now." Elaine faltered, confusion flickering across her face. "But Jacob, I'm doing this for us, for our family." In that moment, I saw the pain etched on Jacob's features, the weight of this twisted situation bearing down on him. I squeezed his hand, lending him my strength. "We're not family, Elaine," Jacob said softly. "You've been living a lie, and it's time to face the truth." Officers swarmed around us, restraining Elaine once more. As they led her away, her anguished cries echoed through the station. Jacob's shoulders sagged, and I held him close, feeling his body shake with silent sobs. The next few months were a whirlwind of court proceedings, therapy sessions, and rebuilding our lives. Elaine was committed to a psychiatric facility, her delusions finally addressed by professionals. Jacob struggled with guilt and grief, mourning the mother he never truly had. Through it all, our love deepened, tempered by the fire we'd endured together. We decided to have a small, intimate wedding, surrounded only by our closest friends and family. As I walked down the aisle, Jacob's eyes shining with tears of joy, I knew that every trial had been worth it for this moment. Weeks turned into months, and slowly we found our rhythm again. We bought a cozy house in a quiet neighborhood, far from the memories of our turbulent past. Jacob threw himself into his work, while I focused on my writing, channeling our experiences into a novel that I hoped might help others facing similar struggles. It was a crisp autumn morning when I felt the first flutter in my belly. I stood in our kitchen, hand pressed against my stomach, hardly daring to believe it. When Jacob came home that evening, I greeted him with happy tears and the news he'd been longing to hear. "We're pregnant," I whispered, watching his face transform with wonder and joy. As Jacob knelt before me, pressing his ear to my still flat stomach and whispering words of love to our unborn child, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. We had weathered the storm, emerged stronger, and now we were embarking on the greatest adventure of all, parenthood. The months flew by, our home filling with baby gear and the excited chatter of friends and family. We decided not to learn the baby's gender, relishing the surprise that awaited us. On a warm summer night, as the first stars appeared in the sky, our daughter made her entrance into the world. Holding her in my arms, Jacob beside me, I marveled at the perfect little person we had created. "What should we name her?" Jacob asked softly, stroking her downy head. I smiled, remembering all we had overcome to reach this moment. "How about Hope? Because that's what she represents, our hope for the future and the strength of our love." Jacob's eyes glistened as he nodded. "Hope. It's perfect." As we settled into life as a family of 3, I often reflected on the journey that had brought us here. The pain Elaine had caused seemed distant now, like a half-remembered nightmare. In its place was a deep appreciation for the peace we'd found and the boundaries we'd learned to set. One evening, as I rocked Hope to sleep, Jacob came in with a letter. "It's from the hospital," he said quietly. "Elaine, she's asking to see us." I held my breath, watching Jacob's face carefully. He smiled, a soft, sad smile. "I'm going to write back and decline. Our family, our real family, is right here." As he joined us, wrapping his arms around Hope and me, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. We had faced our demons, confronted our fears, and emerged victorious. Our love had not only survived but thrived, stronger and more resilient than ever. Looking down at our sleeping daughter, I knew that whatever challenges the future might hold, we would face them together, as a family, built on trust, respect, and unbreakable bonds of love. "How dare you show your face here?" I hissed as soon as I caught sight of Alex sauntering towards me across the school parking lot. My hands clenched by my sides, nails digging into my palms. Alex slid his sunglasses down his nose, his mouth curling into a satisfied smirk. "Well, if it isn't my darling ex-wife Meredith, you're looking tired." His gaze raked down my body. I refused to give him the satisfaction of a reaction. "What do you want, Alex?" "Can't I walk my daughter into school?" He mocked offense. Our daughter Lila peered at Alex from behind me, unimpressed. She was wise beyond her 7 years when it came to her father. "You didn't even call her on her birthday last week," I said sharply. "So let's drop the devoted dad act." Alex's smirk faded. Before he could retort, a sleek black SUV pulled up beside us. The driver's door swung open and Ethan stepped out, tall and impeccably dressed. I felt a rush of relief at the sight of my husband. "Everything okay here?" Ethan asked mildly as he moved to stand beside me. Lila immediately went to him for a hug. Alex's lip curled derisively. "Oh, look, your white knight has arrived with his fancy new car. Too bad money can't buy taste or erase your seedy past." Ethan tensed, but a warning glance from me made him hold his tongue. I refused to indulge Alex's juvenile jabs about Ethan's privileged background, not that it was any business of his. "You should leave," I said coldly. Instead, Alex gestured at Ethan's SUV with its Delmont Foods logo. "I see you clawed your way to the top after all. Then again, sleeping with the boss has always been your specialty, hasn't it, Meredith?" Red-hot anger flooded me. How dare Alex throw cheap accusations at me when he was the one who had destroyed our marriage? But before I could spit out a furious retort, Ethan gently squeezed my shoulder. "Actually, I'm not an employee." Ethan's voice was calm and steady. "I was just named CEO last month when my father retired. So technically, this is now my company." Utter shock flashed across Alex's face. It gave me a rush of vicious satisfaction to realize he'd never known. Ethan came from one of the wealthiest families in the state, inheriting a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Alex had only ever seen him as another junior executive at Delmont. "You..." Alex's mouth opened and closed, uncharacteristically lost for words. Ethan gave a thin smile. "Yes, my trust fund alone could buy and sell you a dozen times over. Not that I make a habit of flaunting my family money." He flicked a piece of lint off his impeccably tailored suit. "I just wanted to make one thing very clear, Alex. You are not welcome here. This school, this town, it's my territory now. Stay away from my family, or you'll regret it." Alex paled, shrinked back. Without another word, he turned and hurried away across the parking lot. I let out a long breath as we watched his retreating figure. "Well then," Ethan slipped an arm around me, "I'd say that's enough drama for one morning. Despite everything, I found myself smiling. No matter what storms we weathered, as long as I had Ethan by my side, I knew I could survive anything Alex tried to throw our way. When Ethan said he wanted to grab coffee after dropping Lila off at school, I readied myself for the talk I knew was coming. Ethan took a long sip of his latte, then set it down and turned to face me. So, you and Alex, and me too for that matter, all worked at Delmont Foods when you met, and the rest is history. The very short version of history, I said softly. Well, let me tell you a quick story on my end. Ethan leaned back, holding my gaze with his steady, pale eyes. You started as an assistant about 6 months before I rolled up from California, another recent MBA grad hotshot, hungry for my first real corporate job. One day the CEO himself takes me out on the Delmont yacht as a perk. And there you were in this tiny bikini. I felt myself flush at the memory. My God, how young and foolish I'd been. Barely 26, vainly trying to land a higher-up boyfriend and climbing up the food giant that was Delmont. Honestly, Meredith, I liked you immediately. You were smart, scrappy, vivacious. Ethan shrugged, almost shyly. But I could also tell you were unavailable. A few discreet questions revealed you were dating hotshot young marketing exec Alex Karev. I winced inwardly at Alex's name. How naive I'd been back then, too, imaging us the perfect corporate power couple. If only I could travel back and warn my past self not to ignore all the red flags. Anyway, I tried to move on and focus on my own career, Ethan went on. But, funny enough, here we are 10 years later, exes with Alex and married instead to each other. Ethan raised an eyebrow, softening his words with a wry smile. I chuckled despite the maelstrom of emotions stirred up by this stroll down memory lane. Here we are indeed. Who could have predicted this is where life would take us? I reached across to squeeze his arm. Lucky me, though. Ethan covered my hand gently. I like to think we both got lucky in round 2, Mir. His voice turned somber. But now I think it's time you told me what really went down between you and Alex. I sighed, old hurts rising up from long-buried depths. Honestly, Ethan, I don't know if I have the full story even now. He changed, slowly at first, stayed out more for drinks with the guys, networked aggressively like his life depended on it. I was scrambling to build my own career too, though, so maybe I just didn't want to see the signs. I shook my head at my own willful blindness. Back then, I just wanted the success, the status, the money. I was willing to ignore too much in exchange for that glittering dream. In hindsight, he was clearly cheating on me for months before I caught him with his assistant. I swallowed hard. It was the biggest cliché punch in the gut, and I wasn't even that shocked, just numb at my own stupidity. Oh, Meredith. Ethan's voice was gentle. Don't blame yourself. Alex made those choices. I wanted to make it work at first. I stared into my coffee, remembering those wretched attempts to salvage things as Alex grew ever more brazen with his affair. But when I got pregnant unexpectedly with Lila, it pushed me over the edge. I filed for divorce when I was 8 months along. Ethan blew out a long breath, shaking his head. Well, now Alex popping up again makes more sense. Unfinished business simmering under the surface. I nodded wearily. In my heart, I knew this was only the beginning. Alex's ego would drive him to keep needling old wounds, trying to tear down the happier life I'd built without him. Well, I was more than ready for the fight now. Alex had no idea what he was provoking. My hands shook as I quietly closed Lila's bedroom door, her sobs still echoing in my ears. At 6 years old, she'd just learned the hard truth. Her father didn't want her anymore. I still wasn't sure what had prompted Alex to suddenly file for full custody. Leela had come home from his weekend visit utterly distraught, clutching the court notice. She'd always been an afterthought for Alex at best, so why this sudden strategic move against me now? I stepped out the front door for air, nausea and anger battling inside me. As if conjured by my despair, a sleek sports car purred up the street right then, gliding to a stop at the curb just beyond my driveway. Jenna. Of course, Alex's blonde assistant turned mistress had come to gloat. I strode up to her lowered window, fury overriding my disgust. Well, hello there, Meredith. Jenna purred, snapping her gum. Long time no see. Her smug gaze traveled over my worn yoga pants and faded hoodie. Rough day? Cut the crap. I crossed my arms, refusing to let her see me ruffled. I'm guessing you're behind this latest stunt from Alex. Does his wife know you're running around town doing his dirty work? Jenna scowled, dropping her faux-friendly act. Good. Maybe if you weren't such a shitty mom, Alex wouldn't have to step in for the sake of your daughter, she snapped spitefully. Red hazed my vision. Without thinking, I reached in and snatched the sunglasses off her surgically perfected nose. Listen very closely, you plastic little homewrecker. My voice lashed like a whip as I leaned down to get in her face. You both may have money and connections, but I have everything to lose, and that makes me dangerous. I crushed her $100 shades in my fist. Now get the hell out of my neighborhood before you regret it. Jenna shrank away, for once stunned silent. I stepped back and let her peel off in a squeal of tires. As her taillights disappeared from sight, the red rage seeped away, leaving me drained and hollow. I trudged back inside with leaden limbs, pausing as my eyes landed on the pile of legal documents awaiting my response. Even just glancing at the logo for Alex's law firm kicked my heart rate up again. This was bad. Alex had the fancy lawyers and privilege on his side. While I could barely scrape rent together some months, he clearly aimed to bury me in legal bills, grinding me down through attrition. Exhausted and beaten down by the day's events, I collapsed onto the couch and finally let the tears fall. Hugging a throw pillow to my chest, I let myself cry in heaving sobs. For Lila's innocence shattered too young, for the years and dreams I'd wasted on Alex, for the injustice of seeing bad people continuously rewarded while the good suffered undeserved misery. A quiet knock at the door startled me. Scrubbing hastily at my face, I peeked out to see Ethan on my doorstep, his expression full of concern. Lila's teacher mentioned there was drama with Alex today and you left upset. I just wanted to come check on you both. He shuffled his feet. I know I'm probably overstepping, but I had to make sure you were okay. A fresh sob rose in my throat at this kindness. I stepped back in a wordless invitation. Ethan hovered uncertainly just inside. I'm so sorry you're dealing with this crap from Alex now on top of everything else. His jaw tightened, a hard glint entering those soft blue eyes. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but sometimes karma takes too damn long with assholes like him. Despite everything, his vehemence surprised a watery chuckle from me. I sank back down onto the couch, suddenly beyond grateful not to be alone in this battle anymore. Thank you for coming by, Ethan. I really needed a friendly face tonight. I wiped my eyes, feeling the tiniest spark of hope flickering back to life inside me. And as for Alex, trust me, his karma is coming, one way or another. I tapped my foot impatiently against the courthouse floor, my nerves stretched thin. Any minute now, I expected to hear the click of Alex's designer shoes stalking up the hall, flanked by his army of suits. But the footsteps that approached were slower, more measured. I looked up and, to my astonishment, saw Ethan striding towards me, looking crisp and confident in a charcoal suit that had to cost more than my car. Ethan, what are you doing here? I stared at him, confused. Ever since becoming an unexpected shoulder for me to lean on these past few turbulent months, Ethan had been nothing short of a godsend. But I couldn't imagine why he'd turned up here today of all days. Wordlessly, Ethan held open the conference room door, gesturing for me to enter first. Bewildered, I stepped inside. My knees nearly buckled with relief at the sight of Lila laughing happily away on Izzy's lap. Alex's attorney sister had a soft spot for my daughter even amidst this legal crossfire. I rushed over, unable to resist sweeping Lila into a fierce hug. Over her shoulder, I shot Ethan a questioning look. He gave me a slow smile. I'm your new pro bono legal counsel. Surprise. What? How? I sank weakly down into a chair, dizzy with shock. Ethan sat beside me. I called in a favor from an old friend from my Harvard law days who owed me big time. Once I explained the situation with Alex trying to drown you in legal fees as retaliation, he was happy to help. Well, Iz and I decided to throw dear Alex a curveball this morning. Izzy smirked from across the table. Nothing screws up a bully's game plan like being utterly ignored. I glanced between them, almost giddy with relief. Having Izzy on my side had been a key advantage so far, but with Ethan's high-profile connections on board too, I felt unstoppable. Now, Ethan pulled out an intimidatingly thick folder of documents and turned to me with a smile. Let's talk about preempting every devious maneuver your ex may try. Don't worry about the legal bills anymore, Mir. I want to help protect you and Lila any way I can. His hand covered mine, warm and steadying. My heart gave an odd flutter. I tried to ignore the tiny inner voice pointing out all Ethan's attractive qualities, now amplified tenfold in a suit. There would be time later to analyze whatever was simmering between us lately. For now, I needed to focus on the fight ahead. "All right, ladies, let's crush this." Izzy cracked her knuckles dramatically and winked at Lila. "Auntie Izzy and Godfather Ethan have a bulletproof battle plan ready for the judge, so your mean old dad doesn't stand a chance." Lila's grin filled me with fierce determination. I would move heaven and earth before I let Alex torment my daughter for his petty games. Not when we finally had a real shot at a stable, happy future now, thanks to Ethan. I knew with bone-deep certainty that I could weather any coming storms with this man by my side. My premonition proved true over the whirlwind legal proceedings that followed. Just as Izzy predicted, Alex failed to make even a ripple fighting against the strategic duo of her and Ethan combined. At last came the bittersweet final signing of divorce papers I'd evaded completing for so long. My hand trembled slightly as I scrawled my name one last time as Meredith Kurev. Ethan's steadying grip on my shoulder kept me grounded. As we left the imposing courthouse doors for good, I tipped my face up to the brilliant sunlight with relief. The future lay ahead filled with promise. I could focus on Lila now, on my career, on exploring this surprising new connection with Ethan. The past could finally rest in peace. I turned to Ethan with joyful tears sparkling in my eyes. "It's over. We're free." His answering smile outshone even the dazzling sunshine above. "No, Meredith." He squeezed my hand, his own rare public display revealing the depth of emotion behind that reserved facade. "This is only the beginning." As I hurried down the echoing corridor towards the principal's office, my heart pounded out a frantic beat. The urgent summons from Lila's school ignited all my worst fears. Had Alex overstepped his bounds and caused more trouble? I burst into the room, my stomach knotted into a tangled mess. But the sight behind the imposing oak desk left me speechless. Alex huddled on one chair, suit disheveled and sporting the beginnings of a black eye. Beside him sat Jenna, vainly trying to cover what looked suspiciously like a bite mark marring her exposed shoulder, and standing guard over them both with crossed arms and icy fury blazing in his blue eyes stood Ethan. "Good, you're finally here." Ethan's tone was clipped, a sure sign his anger still simmered below that polished executive surface. "Perhaps you can shed some light on exactly what happened at the playground today, because your ex-husband and his accomplice seem a little dazed on the details." It was only then I noticed Lila tucked against Ethan's side, looking tiny and stressed but physically unharmed. Overwhelming relief at seeing my baby girl uninjured temporarily muted my barrage of questions. I went straight to her and swept her into my arms. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" I pulled back to search her face worriedly. I rushed right over as soon as they called me. Lila's lower lip wobbled. "Aunt Jenna and Daddy came when me and Zoe were playing. They started yelling that Zoe's mom was a stupid lying lawyer," she sniffled. "Zoe cried and ran away. I got mad and bit Aunt Jenna." Her voice rose defiantly on the last line. I blinked, impressed despite myself at my daughter's bold defense of her friend. "Yes, and that was very wrong." Ethan smoothed down Lila's hair gently. "We don't settle fights with our teeth, even when protecting people we care about." He shot a reproving look at Jenna, who flushed and looked away. I stood, hands anchored on my hips. "Would someone please explain what the hell is going on here?" I demanded. Behind me, Alex made a disgruntled noise, but wisely stayed silent. Ethan guided me a few steps away and spoke lowly. Apparently Zoe's mother represented Jenna's ex in a nasty divorce, like ripping him off for millions level nasty. His mouth flattened grimly. "I assume they came here today meaning to cause trouble for her through the kids." Red-hot rage flooded my veins. The absolute nerve of Alex and his scheming girlfriend, dragging innocent children into their deranged grudges. I crossed quickly back to Lila, brushing her hair back to meet her eyes intently. "You were so brave defending your friend. I'm proud of you for standing up to bullies." Over her head, I pinned Alex and Jenna with a blistering look promising swift later retribution. Their twin glares bounced off my fury like droplets of rain. Just then the door banged open, admitting a harried woman I recognized as Zoe's mother. Her shocked gaze bounced between our tense tableau and Lila tucked protectively under my arm. "Mrs. Quinn, Ethan swiftly intercepted her, laying on his polished CEO charm. Let's step into the hall to discuss the incident from a legal perspective. He put a hand on her back, smoothly guiding her out. Through the window, I watched him work his magic, doubtlessly summarizing events in a light most favorable towards the girls. I focused back on my daughter, letting Ethan handle diffusing the situation his way. My priority stood cradled here in my arms. The rest could come later. Let's get you home, baby girl. I lifted Lila's chin gently. I think we've all had enough drama for one day. Her answering, watery smile and tight hug soothed my raging heart. As we left the tense office behind, I sent up a silent prayer of thanks for Ethan. Yet again, he'd raced to our rescue like a dark knight in his sleek black car. And I'd never felt more secure knowing together we could conquer any monsters who dared threaten our peace. The tense silence stretched between us in the aftermath of my furious tirade. Ethan leaned back against the couch, jaw tight as he processed my barrage of bitter revelations. At last, the toxic flood tide of secrets from my past unleashed, I felt hollowed out physically and emotionally. Ethan dragged a hand over his face warily. Jesus, Mir, I'm so sorry you and Lila have shouldered this toxicity alone for so long. That level of obsessive harassment. He shook his head, lines of anger bracketing his mouth. Why the hell haven't you involved the authorities before now? I closed my eyes against the rush of old shame. At first, I just kept hoping if I put my head down and focused on being a good mom, eventually Alex would lose interest when he didn't get a rise out of me. I exhaled shakily. But lately it feels like the floodgates opened. Like now that I'm actually happy again, he's snapped. Ethan reached over and squeezed my hand gently. This cycle of violence stops now, Meredith. No more handling this alone. I'm calling my private security team and a lawyer first thing tomorrow. Then I want to sit down with Lila and explain gently why she won't see her father unsupervised anymore. His eyes tightened with suppressed fury. Whatever it takes, I won't let that volatile bastard near either of you again. Overwhelmed with relief at finally setting down my exhaustive burden, I leaned into Ethan's strength literally and figuratively. Just feeling his solid chest under my cheek unleashed a fresh wave of tears, only this time, cathartic ones. I wept for the naive girl who once loved Alex unguardedly, for the battered woman who broke finally leaving him, for the protective mother hardened into vigilance against his campaign of cruelty. All different versions of myself rendered refugees by one man's destructive obsession. Ethan simply held me through the storm, hands gently rubbing my back. Having witnessed the traumatic genesis firsthand now, he no doubt understood this purge stood long overdue. At last I surfaced, scrubbing the heels of my hands roughly over my swollen eyes. I'm so sorry for dumping all this ugliness into your lap, Ethan, I rasped hoarsely. You deserve better than being saddled with another man's damage. His fingertips nudged my chin up insistently. You have nothing to apologize for. I care about you, both of you, deeply. I'm not going anywhere. His earnest words unlocked something painfully vulnerable in my chest. Before reason could intervene, I leaned forward and pressed my lips desperately to his. Our first kiss held no artifice or sweet romantic pretense, just raw, exposed need meeting steadfast reassurance. Perfect understanding passed soul-deep between us in the charged silence after we finally broke apart. Ethan grazed my cheek lightly with his thumb. We'll get through this fire, Meredith. Together. I covered his broad hand with my own, finally daring to hope again for the first time in years. With Ethan beside me, even Alex's sinister storm clouds seemed surmountable threats rather than looming doom. Bolstered by newfound courage, I hugged Lila close that night and made a silent, solemn vow over her sleeping form. No matter the costs, Alex would never torment my baby again. His twisted attacks ended now, one way or another. Mama Bear had awoken at last to protect and shelter her cub, and not even his savagery could stand against my ferocity for long. All his earlier tempests now seemed paltry preludes to the full hurricane fury I would rain down if Alex dared menace my daughter further. For Lila's sake and mine both, the reckoning had arrived, and not even hell itself held an agony sufficient for unleashing on that miserable man, should he push me too far. I stirred my morning coffee absently, still mentally spinning over the latest unthinkable stunt from Alex. Luring Lila out of school illegally to take her for ice cream without my permission counted as kidnapping in my book, never mind his pathetic arguments about just wanting father-daughter bonding time. My phone buzzed with an incoming call, jolting me from vengeful fantasies of sixing Ethan's security squad on my deranged ex. Speak of the devil, I smiled instinctively just seeing Ethan's handsome face flash on my screen. Please tell me you have good news on the Alex front, I answered without preamble. Even better. Ethan's smooth voice held a smile. I come bearing gifts of gourmet cupcakes and moral support. Buzz me up? I glanced down at my faded college sweatshirt and messy top knot. Not exactly hostess chic, but then again Ethan had seen me far more haggard lately. You're a lifesaver, I sighed, pressing the door release. Moments later I ushered him inside, unable to resist going up on tiptoes to steal a quick kiss. Ever since that emotionally charged evening when our relationship shifted into romantic territory, I couldn't get enough of Ethan's steadying presence. He held up a box from my favorite bakery, looking unfairly gorgeous with his slightly rumpled hair and open collar exposing a tantalizing V of skin. Couldn't have you facing the lawyer on an empty stomach, he winked. I grinned despite my endless Alex-induced headaches. God bless this man. Over lavish red velvet cupcakes, Ethan outlined the injunction paperwork barring Alex from contacting either Lila or me outside official supervised visitation. And if he violates these court orders even once, he'll not only face contempt charges, but also trigger an automatic restraining order. Ethan looked immensely satisfied delivering this news. I could have cried in relief knowing the legal avenues now protected us while the bigger investigation into Alex's shady practices unfolded. Turns out even wealthy corporate executives had limits to flouting the rules under Ethan's watchful eye. Stuffed on cream cheese frosting and justice, I relaxed back with a contented sigh. Hopefully Alex finally realizes he's not exempt from facing consequences. Here's hoping. Ethan stacked our empty plates. Unfortunately, when it comes to ruthless narcissists like your ex-husband, the hard lesson usually requires hammering home a few times. His expression turned serious. I know you're not scared easily, Meredith, but please promise you'll let my security team handle any direct interactions if Alex approaches you or Lila again. My instinctive, stubborn independence bristled slightly at the protective decree, but the earnest love shining in Ethan's eyes wore my reluctance down. I knew his directive came from caring deeply rather than any deliberately heavy-handed male posturing. I lifted our joined hands and brushed a soft kiss over Ethan's knuckles. I promise, babe. No more stubbornly trying to tackle everything solo. His shoulders relaxed, tension easing from his frame. Our sweet moment got interrupted by Lila bounding through the door fresh from school, full of chatter about her day. As we listened indulgently to her winding stories, I felt my heart settle into calm, steady rhythm for the first time in forever. The trials of my past with Alex seemed now muted nightmares compared to this luminous present with Ethan and Lila. I'd been running so hard towards imaginary futures before. I missed recognizing the only dreams worth chasing sat right here under this roof, filled with laughter and light. No matter what storms still brewed on the horizon, together we'd shine brightly enough to weather even Alex's bitterest gale forces. This right here already felt like home, the safe harbor I'd fought so desperately to reach through so many dark and frightening nights. At long last, we'd found our way home.